All right, we are back, and it is it's Wednesday night. Ha! Always get them. My weeks go by so fast. I don't know if that happens to you guys or not, but my days blend together with everything that we have going on, everything that we're working on for you guys. Have some cool new announcements coming to you in the near future. I won't get into those tonight, but they're coming quickly. Where are we at, man? Oh man, we've got. Since Monday, I thought the Bank of Japan would past 162, which is the level we've been talking about for a while. They've been guarding that for years. Literally, that was where everything started to unwind in 2024, and we're over that. We've been over it for a couple days now. I posted a tweet over there on Twitter with Batman in a rocking chair, which is reflective of XRP just waiting to save the day as soon as Japan actually needs him, which I think we may be on the precipice of. I don't, can they kick the can? A guy made a really good meme. He said, can they kick the can? Sure. And they could, but I don't know. I have a good feeling about tomorrow. Ripple likes Thursdays. So we'll see what ends up happening. We have some signs of things breaking, which I'll touch on in just a moment. And then we'll get into a bunch of these super chats. And again, appreciate y'all taking time out of your Wednesday. Please hit the like, subscribe, share if you do get value from this. It does help the algorithm in the channel. And I don't have any sponsors because we sponsored the channel ourselves. So, and that's why I can talk about what I want to talk about. So back to where we're at on the macro, because I know that's what you guys come for. Korean stock market is imploding. I don't know if you're watching any of that carnage or not. Thank you, my wonderful wife with the tea.
Regular water.
Just water, but in the very nice, Yeti glass. So yeah, Korea's stock market is imploding on itself, down 30%. They've gone through a bunch of different circuit breakers, basically where they pause the market for a moment of time, so to kind of let people shore things up. The Nikkei has not seen the same type of downside, but we are starting to see move down in the Nikkei. It is, I think, 3% is what I said. Now we're back up a little bit, so not quite the same implications there. But I have a feeling. So just so you guys are aware, August of 2024, the Korean stock market also imploded alongside the Nikkei before it reached the U.S. markets the next day when everything started to unwind. We haven't seen them raise rates yet. We are still hanging out, again, like I said, over 162, not quite to 163. We did see another intervention today. It looks like we're coming to the end of a channel now. I'd expect it to move higher again. The chart looks like it's going parabolic at this point. So if they don't do something, I think tonight we could crack through 163, and they are going to have to intervene in the currency market. And really their only recourse at this point is to raise interest rates aggressively. They've talked about, being closer to 2%. I think that's what they would probably have to do in order to be able to quell the issues that they're having. The Bank of Japan came out and said, they polled a bunch of banks in Japan, and they said that they thought that the average yen price for the year would be around 152. So if we look at where the yen has been for the first half of this year, we've been pretty high up, much higher than 152 for the majority of this year. So that would mean that they believe, as an average, that the yen will be appreciating substantially, basically, against the dollar for the rest of the year, which would mean their stock market would do worse, and it would also save their currency. So we've also got some other announcements. Taiwan, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention over there, but they've regulated stablecoins in that region. That Ripple, may or may not have a presence there, and XRP as well. Southeast Asia is a big, hotbed for XRP and people that are advocates for the XRPL, which is awesome. XRP Sol and Token 2049. There's there's a bunch of events over there where there's a very strong presence in that region. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were using RLUSD and XRP over there in Taiwan also. But that's big news. You also had Japan, the news that came out Monday night that we were like, okay, maybe there's something here. Big old nothing burger, unfortunately. Well, it's not a nothing burger. It is important. The yen and Japan and India basically have a direct channel to be able to swap currencies. Now they have a partnership, and oil is going to snap back here. I don't know if that's tomorrow. Do they kick the can past the end of the week here for the 4th? Maybe there's some cool announcements on the 4th. We'll just have to wait to see. I will say this 4th is going to be very interesting. It's 250th anniversary of the United States, founding United States. And they're doing a second ball drop of the 2026, 589 bulbs in the 2026 ball drop on July 4th this year in New York. So maybe some other announcements that come out around that. Could that involve a new financial system and kind of standard for how things work? We need a lot to happen in the next 2 days if that's going to be the case. But that's not out of the question. Everything is stood up ready to go here. And at a moment's notice, if we do see oil spike, because reserves are super low, if the U.S. decided to say, hey, we're not going to be supplying oil to the rest of the world, and we don't care that the strait is still shut down, you bet your britches or your biscuits, however you want to put it, that oil is going to spike again. And I know Trump's out there touting that it's below where, when they originally invaded. The amount of available oil and where price is does not compute. There's a huge discrepancy there, and there will be a snapback moment. And the only other option to snap it back to where the prices are now is somehow they magically find a bunch of oil. I don't see that happening. Even if the Strait of Hormuz got unclogged, or not unclogged, but reopened, and the conflict was over, it's still going to take a long time for oil to actually make it to the ports around the world. They're padding some numbers right now to get things by, but at some point they're going to let the public know that that's no longer the case, and it's going to move drastically the other direction. I kind of anticipate that may be tomorrow, now that we see things cracking over there in Korea. If we see some other issues in Japan, if we see their currency, the Nikkei depreciating is going to cause new highs in their stock market, right? Because their stock market's priced in the yen. So a less valuable yen means stocks are worth more. Same thing here in the US. As the dollar value, or the value of our dollar goes down, stocks are worth more. Houses, all those things. If the currency becomes worth more, then the value of assets would come down in relative terms. I say that, not even in relative terms, in nominal terms, which is what most people think is the real thing. But in reality, the value of something is the value of something. Our currency is what inflates away and has less purchasing power. It's a weird illusion that most people have no concept of. If you're here watching this, then you probably understand that. And I think a lot more people have become very aware that is how this works at this point. So that's where things are at. We've got some super chats that I've got to get into. Might cut out just a little early tonight, but I'll let you guys know as we get into it here. All right. So first up, Rick Johnson, my man. How are you, sir? He says, you know what? Happy price appreciation, Jake. What do you think about Ripple and Stellar joining with BlackRock, MasterCard, Visa, and 148 others on the Open USD? Love you, fam. Happy July 4th and the 250th anniversary. Oh, sorry. That was from KT Baby, and she is clapping back at Rick Johnson. So from what I understand, this is kind of their loophole in the ability to be able to generate yield. And if the Clarity Act were to pass, it would remove this option. So for everybody to be joining that tells me that they're pretty confident that the Clarity Act doesn't get through, at least in the version that it currently sits, which somebody's been telling you guys that for a long time at this point. Polymarket is now starting to agree. You've got, other people starting to agree. And like I've said before, I would love nothing more than the Clarity Act to pass. I just don't see, unless we have a significant catalyst that really just pushes Congress to the edge. And even at that point, Trump has said that he will not sign anything until the SAVE Act is passed. So, and they're not working on that legislation next. He's already denied one thing that they pushed to his desk. So I don't see it. I don't think that they're going to want to pass the SAVE Act because they want some voter fraud and manipulation. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm not a politician, and I'm also not in Congress. But what I will say is there are so many headwinds against the Clarity Act getting passed this year before August recess. I'm going to move I was 95.5. I'm now 98.2 on it. I am 98% sure that the Clarity Act does not get passed before the August recess. And if we get back from that and they have midterms and some things do not shift wildly from where they sit right now, probably not in 2026. And then depending on how the midterms go and who's in control of the House and the Senate, may not even happen in 2027. I don't like that. I want the industry to progress. I think that that's going to hold a lot of other blockchains back. I think that the SEC and the CFTC have been able to pick winners at this point because they've come up with 16 that they view as commodities, and that's what's going to be used. But at some point, like we've talked about this for a long time, there's going to be a huge consolidation of the entire asset class. There can't be 50, 60,000 cryptos. I think somewhere between 50 and 90 total networks globally that have real world utility and unique use cases. That's what's going to be left after the consolidation. Tether, another big piece of that. Supposedly today was the day that they got delisted over there in the EU. I didn't see any implications for Tether. But that doesn't mean that the reverse carry trade unwinding won't have any implications for Tether. So we will continue to watch that. But that's where I'm at on Clarity. I don't like to be in that position. Again, would prefer that it would get passed, but XRP doesn't need it, which I've stated for a long time. Next up, we've got Scott, Mr. Rawlings. He says, hi, Jake from the UK. Good to see you, sir. I'm sure that it's very late there for you. Thank you for taking time out of your evening and staying up late to watch me and ask good questions. He says, Ripple joined the DTCC group with BlackRock. Could an ETF follow? Also, shout out to my XRP bro, Liam Spinlove. Cheers. Shout out to Liam. I mean, so for those that may be new here, in November of 2023, there was a fake BlackRock ETF that was filed. Not an S1 that was submitted, but the trust company in Delaware that's required in order to facilitate an ETF. There was an iShares XRP trust filed in Delaware. The gentleman that just interviewed me at the last conference that I spoke at, Eric, who works for Bloomberg, was the one that reported that that was false and it was a fake, and that the DOJ was investigating. What's interesting to me on that, and this has been a while since I've talked about it, but they've delisted it from the website. It's no longer there. But there was an actual ETF that was faked prior to that for another token. And I believe it was Grayscale that somebody had filed something for to drive the price up. And the same day that that news broke, the founder of the network and company that managed the token came out, along with Grayscale, both saying that they did not file it. It was illegitimate. It was false, and that people should not, listen to it. That didn't happen from Ripple or from BlackRock when this news broke from Bloomberg. I think BlackRock retweeted it, but they themselves did not actually ever come out with a statement, and neither did Ripple. And when both Brad Garlinghouse and Larry Fink have been asked publicly on news channels about the other counterparty and an ETF, both have declined to answer. So maybe there's a there there. I think there is. Tomorrow might be the day. If we see things start to unwind tonight, like I said before, Ripple loves Thursdays. Maybe BlackRock loves Thursdays too. All right. We'll see. About the Journey Sailing. Cool name. They say, hey, Jake, not financial advice. I have several thousand shares in XRPC in Canary's ETF. Very cool. In a 401k. Anything I should be careful of after price appreciation? Do you think it will be safe to stay in that long term since I can't buy the bearer asset in a 401k? They changed the laws where you can buy the bearer asset in a 401k, but not very many people have integrated a solution to actually be able to solve that. So the ETFs do provide the current best option. We know Canary Capital well. Steve and the guys over there are great. I think you'll be happy to stay in that over the long term. I won't say why, because I don't think I'm supposed to, but I think you'll be happy to stay in that over the long term there in your 401k. Wager rewards. Good to see you again. They say, I'm having issues smoothly setting up an account with DWP. I guess Anchorage doesn't have an option on their platform for an IRA trust to transfer in. As a business owner, the extra layer of protection a trust provides me is important to me. My DWP advisor, Brian, is speaking with them to try and get it figured out. Already paid the $1,000 setup fee. Hope that you'd be willing to personally make a call to Anchorage to make things happen quickly, as I would like to get things done as soon as possible. I'm trying to transfer in a significant amount of money, and an employee of mine is also transferring a decent amount of money to DWP. Then we still need to purchase the XRP before price appreciation. Oh, you don't have, I'm going to tell you a trick. If you have an IRA trust or LLC, you can self-custody the assets in there. I would do some research with, some LLMs and maybe an estate planner or your financial advisor. Talk to Brian. He probably isn't familiar with this product, but Dan Plaskett would be if you guys want to coordinate with him. I'm pretty confident that you would be able to buy the XRP and create a wallet underneath that IRA trust that you manage and purchase the XRP now and then transfer that in after they get the account set up. Because I'm concerned that things may move in the near future here. And I don't want you to be, or your employee to be left out in the cold, mad and upset that we didn't get things done in a timely manner. So that would be my recommendation. If you're listening to this, which hopefully you are, I would give that, not a Google, but go to the LLMs and search about it. But and then you may have to file some paperwork alongside that and denote the the wallet address that's going to be holding those assets inside of that IRA trust. But I'm confident that that type of vehicle allows you to administer the assets and hold it in your own cold wallet, because I've seen other people do it. There's like Forge and Quest, Forge Trust and Quest Trust that do a self-directed IRA, LLC, or trust IRA, and it allows you to hold the assets directly. It's not something that we've dealt with, just candidly. The additional trust component or the LLC component inside of an IRA. Most people have a traditional, a Roth, a SEP, an inherited one, stuff like that. But we do need to do it. From Brant, he says, will we see any high-profile arrests down the road? Why else would we have D-class the way we are? Maybe post-new financial system, public trust lost in government officials, fades fast, leading to technocracy. Who have you been talking to that I've been talking to, Brant? I normally don't get into the Q stuff. I'm not going to. There may, I don't know what the outcome is going to be there. I will say this about Q and all the other things that people look at. I think, again, like I've said before, it's great to get information across the board, take it all with a grain of salt. When the US government runs a PSYOP, whether it's on its own population or internationally, oftentimes there are true things put out in the PSYOP alongside a lot of other misinformation, which makes it difficult to decipher what is true and what is not. I do think that we are headed toward a technocracy. I do think that a lot of people have lost a lot of faith in the government. Technocracy gained a lot of momentum during the Great Depression, during the 1930s. Elon Musk's grandfather, Scott, I can't think of his first name, but his last name was Scott, was the proponent of that here in the US, and then ended up going to Canada and kind of changed parties a little bit, and ended up in South Africa, where he obviously met Musk, and then eventually Elon was born. If you haven't looked up a technocracy, highly encourage you to do so. I don't know how quickly we get there, but I think that's where we're headed, and probably faster than most people think. Are the things you mentioned here catalysts that could propel us toward that type of government structure faster? Absolutely. Will those be publicly displayed to achieve those objectives? Also quite possible. So I'm not going to rule it out. I'm good at guessing where we're headed. Sequences of events to get there and the timing of those, I can often see the sequence and the things that need to happen, but timeframes, you guys are aware I'm not perfect at. I don't think anybody is. So anyway, great question, and highly possible. This one here is who is Dis? They say, I really appreciate you. As far as I can tell, your advice for LLCs, etc., isn't really applicable for UK holders. Any advice pre and post price appreciation? You're not going to like my advice if you're in the UK, really, or Canada or Australia. Any of the 28 jurisdictions that the monarchy, which is no longer a monarchy, but they still own the land, controls or has purview over, taxes are horrible. And so I did a bunch of research on the UK because I wanted to see, like, what are the best structures there. If you structure a trust in the UK, if you die within 7 years of structuring the trust, it unwinds all of it. You lose everything, still goes through probate, provides you no additional protections. They still tax you inside of it. A limited company that's there, you get a lot of benefits if you are outside the UK and form a corporation that way. You actually get some tax benefits if you do that, because they're looking to bring in outside capital into the country. But for people that actually live there, it's not good at all. You don't get a whole lot of protection, and you're still taxed out the wazoo. So unfortunately, the best advice that I could give you if you are in any of those jurisdictions, realistically, would be move. They're all residency tax based. And for that purpose, you can only spend a certain amount of time in the country. I'm not saying don't go there and visit family and do fun stuff. But if you really do want to, not be giving the government a ton of your money, and have it protected in a way where you maintain anonymity and you get the creditor protection and all the other stuff, you got to get offshore. At Portugal at this point has also been a bit more stringent with things and less forgiving on other stuff. A lot of people have used that as a safe harbor in the UK for an extended period of time. It's also starting to not be so great. Cyprus is probably the next closest thing. Jordan or the Isle of Man, all of those are not bad if you're there in the UK. Many people that we've worked with have moved to Dubai. And then they only spend, the maximum amount of time that they can in the country to make sure that they're not a resident there. And oftentimes they'll get golden visas. Monaco, Malta, there's some other jurisdictions, and also in Dubai where you can purchase a decent sized piece of real estate. I think Malta, you have to make a $2 million or $2.5 million donation to the government. There's different things that you can do if you have enough money to get citizenship in certain jurisdictions. What was the one we were going to do here? We wanted, people from the Middle East wanted citizenship here, from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And we were going to, it was going to be like a $5 million entry fee or something. We could do it. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I'm sorry that I don't. All right. On to the super chats for tonight. Again, appreciate you taking time out of your Wednesday to come watch. I forget to say this often, so I probably won't say it again until the end of the night, but please like, subscribe, share, hype it if you feel so compelled over there on YouTube, X, Facebook, and over here on TikTok. Heads up, TikTok, my phone is at 12%. We're probably going to get about an hour in, and it's going to die. So I apologize in advance for that. Oh, the disclaimer. Thank you, Till. Other thing that I should state is none of this is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor, an attorney, or a CPA before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. The opinions I express here tonight are my opinions, and they are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. All right, we can get into the questions now. Danny, Caribbean, he says, great. Jake the Great, holding 30,000 XRP at $500 with 30% LTV. I could buy a house and live off of it. Could this happen this year after the reverse carry trade, and how? Thanks. I mean, I have a public bet that is going to at least 750 by the end of the year. I wouldn't make that bet unless I was confident in that. I made that bet last year, and I did lose that bet. We were able to pay some people back that had lost their XRP. Same deal on this one. The winner pays, scams takes bets from a whole bunch of other people. And not a ton of XRP, but a lot of people don't have a ton of XRP to lose. And it irks me. So I've been very blessed in my life. If I'm able to help make a difference for other people that may have not been so fortunate, I'm happy to take on that burden. And then also, hopefully it's double or nothing and we get back to nothing, and he's got to come back and pay all of them back this year. And he pays me my money back that he took from me last year. But I think this year it's going to be at a much, much higher price when he has to pay me back. So the answer, look, if the perfect storm plays out like I think it's going to, yes. 30% LTV is very reasonable. Interest rates, I do think, will come down substantially as we see more adoption and liquidity move into crypto. And probably very reasonable to be able to purchase a home and continue to borrow against it with another portion of it put to work, earning yield to be able to service the debt. Kind of the infinite banking concept. Too Many Dance. Good to see you, dude. He says, legend, the yen is out of control. Maybe we get some action during our fourth. What more can they do? The kicking of the can has nothing to do left to give. I would agree. I think the can is crumpled and flat and very difficult to kick at this point. It is. You might be able to scoot the can. That's all they can do, is scoot the can at this point. Yeah, we're at unprecedented levels here for the yen versus the USD. Hasn't been seen in 40 years, and they're not going to continue to allow this to go on. What they stated Monday is there would be a joint statement between the BOJ and the Fed on monetary policy. I'm waiting for that. I think it needs to be while markets are open in order to get XRP going. Once it's going, I think that they can flywheel it from there. But I think it has to get to at least 50 or $100 before they can start using it. And then the flywheel will continue to compound it and it will go to higher and higher prices. In order for that to happen, we have to have a ton of liquidity move in. Institutions, I guess, could buy on the weekend, but I think it's going to be ETF volume that and Evernorth buying a lot of XRP because people are investing in it. So maybe if I was going to orchestrate this for the perfect storm, this is how I would do it. I would coordinate with BlackRock and Evernorth if I were Ripple. I've got 1,700 NDAs. I would also get with Trump and Elon, and there would be a big announcement. We would roll both the ETF for some big announcement that's important for XRP and its actual use case and implementation, or disclosures around who's going to be using it. Okay. That comes out publicly first, in my mind, some PR. That primes it. That's going to drive a bunch of people to the exchanges. You're going to see price start to move. You have BlackRock roll their ETF. You have Evernorth also launch their SPAC. And now people are piling in from their traditional portfolios. Other wealth managers are piling in. And you're going to be able to drive the price substantially higher in a very short period of time, because the OTC desk would be dry, and so would the dark pools. That's when we're going to see a move. We need large amounts of volume moving through the exchanges with very low liquidity to drive the price to where it needs to be. And then once it's at a high enough price or value, it can then be leveraged to save the day if we do in fact see all of the other things that I think are going to ensue with the reverse carry trade. Like I mentioned, Korea's stock market is down 30% already this evening in a very short period of time. I think that's going to come to a market near you. I think that we're going to see a credit crisis across markets where things could potentially freeze up. And the only way to be able to kickstart and get things going again is to move to real-time settlement. And the only way they're going to be capable of doing that is by driving a bunch of liquidity into XRP so that they can then start using it in that capacity to get us out of the hole and build the flywheel back the other direction. So we got one more day that the market's open this week. So if there's going to be something July 4th, I would think they would need to do something tomorrow. But again, I'm not saying there's going to be something on July 4th. Would be cool. Maybe there's a there. There's a lot that points to that. I will say that. But if that's going to happen, we need to get a move on here in the next 24 hours. I'm going to butcher the name if I try to say it. So thank you for the super chat. They say, my 3 sons are members of the mastermind and they have purchased enough XRP for me to retire this year if it is mid 3 digits. Will I become their foursome on the T-Box this year? Thanks for your info. I would love that. And I think that there's a high probability based on the current macro events that I believe are going to play out in the second half of this year and potentially very quickly here, where you will be able to join your children and your boys and play some golf. Yeah. James, Mr. Westcott, he says, hey, Jake, our XRP whisperer, Beyond Broke Mastermind, Carbon One. Glad to see you, dude. Appreciate you. He says, just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing. I think price appreciation aside, we all take a second and appreciate the massive shift in how the world will run. I would agree. That tends to be people's main focus is just price. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would caveat that by saying, if you have done the research and you really see the paradigm shift that we're going through and what this looks like on the other side and the implications that are going to go along with that, and you could take it a bunch of different ways. You could say it's going to be dystopian or utopian or I think it'll be somewhere down the middle, just like the rest of the world and all of history has been. Um, but this is a monumental shift in how the entire world will work. I don't know if you guys saw Fable 5 come back out a little bit earlier today. I burnt through a lot of tokens really fast using that deal. If you haven't tried Anthropic's Claude for coding and vibe coding and doing a bunch of stuff, Fable's wild. When it was first released, they took it off the market, right? Because the U.S. government said there was a threat, and it definitely was. Because you could say, "Hey, build me an app like eBay," and it would just build you another eBay. Like it would go do all the research, find everything, find some GitHub repositories and other stuff, some open source code, and then just build what would be almost an exact replica of eBay. The people have not realized yet. I'm not a coder at all. Like I took computer science in high school. And there was C++ and Java, and I understand enough because we've worked with our developers to kind of guide things. And I can speak a little bit about like which languages to code things in based on what I think they're good for, and what I've seen other people use them for. But the actual writing of the code itself, nope. But with this, you just tell it what you want, and it builds it for you. What would have cost? I vibe coded an application, which is going to be really cool for you guys once we get it implemented. It would have cost me easily to get the level of code and all the functionality that I've built in 2.5 weeks would have taken a year ago, would have taken 6 to 8 months and probably at least $500,000. And I did it myself with an AI agent. So if that doesn't tell you how quickly we're moving toward a deflationary system where everything becomes exponentially cheaper almost overnight, I don't know how to impress upon you the efficiencies that this is going to create in society. And I know that scares a lot of people that they're going to lose their jobs. I think it's just going to make people super productive. And if you're not using it for your job, highly, highly encourage you to start checking it out. We actually just released a deal on the mastermind. It's a second brain project. It's in Carbon One over there. There are people charging $5,000 to $10,000 for what we just shared in the mastermind. So if you're a member, you get that $100 a month. You get access to something that's going to cost other people $5,000 at a minimum. Again, not trying to sell you on the mastermind. We will continue to do cool stuff like that. We want that community to have all the resources and all the tools to be extremely successful. And on the other side of price appreciation, you're going to have capital. And if you have the knowledge, you've done the research, you have all this understanding, you're part of a greater community, and you see opportunities in order to be able to create value in your niche where you have expertise, like sky's the limit. I think we're going to have other people that build billion-dollar companies that come out of our mastermind on a regular basis, post price appreciation. And I don't think you even need the money. Like I just explained, you maybe need that for ads or distribution. But as far as like building the tech, normally it used to you'd have to raise hundreds, I don't know about hundreds of millions, but millions of dollars in your seed and Series A just to build the product that you had an idea for. You can now vibe code that. It is absurd. So I know I'm belaboring this, but like if you're not deep into this, I would encourage you to figure it out very quickly. There's Wager Rewards. He was watching. Cool. He says, Genius Act passed July 2025, but it isn't fully in effect till 1/1/27. Do you think Clarity Act will take that long as well before we start feeling price appreciation from it? I've said this many times before, and I will continue to say it, and other people will oppose it adamantly, which is fine. We can all have different opinions. We all know what the destination is. But the Clarity Act's not going to cause price appreciation. Actual real world events where it requires the implementation of this technology, a supply shock to get the price there, and then implementation will be the reason that we see price appreciation for XRP. Once we see adoption for XRP, there are 15 other assets that have also been designated commodities. I think HBAR will do exceptionally well. I think XLM will do exceptionally well. Probably anything in that bucket that's been designated a commodity probably is going to do okay. Everything else, maybe. But that's where the opportunity is going to be post price appreciation also. If you can pick other winners that are still around that do have, upside in a large total addressable market. A lot of people talk about Stronghold. A lot of people talk about Velo. A lot of people talk about Proppy. There's, Hash is another one. There's going to be other things that still stay low because they haven't seen the real utility. Algorand, this person says. Another great one. There's going to be other blockchains that I think are going to be around that will garner some piece of the market that has a total addressable market that is large, and they will win. And if you can still buy those low, probably going to do pretty good. You already did great on this one and maybe a couple other ones because they were implemented. If you understand this asset class and you can define those opportunities and get into them before they do see the adoption, that's where I think the continued opportunity in this asset class is over the next 3 to 5 years. I think in 5-6 years, we're probably going to see this asset class maturing with real world utility and implementation. And that's not to say that we won't continue to see upside. I just think the growth will start to truncate, similar to what you're seeing with Bitcoin at this point. It's on a 15-year run, and the logarithmic moves that we've seen, or percentage moves that we've seen, are significantly truncated on the long end of the arc over the time frame. I think the same would be true for utility-driven assets, with the caveat that we don't see exponential growth in GDP because of the implementation of humanoid robots and progressive technologies and AI, which Elon is advocating that there's going to be at least a 10x in GDP over the next 10 years, and he thinks that's conservative. I would tend to agree with him, and you need these networks to be able to scale with the growth of the economies that we create, the current one and the future ones as well. So onward to infinity if you're in the right things. Good to see you. They say legend. The original Roman calendar has 10 days starting in March. Now the White Rider says that BG's May is July. You said BG 123 ends everything in May. BG's last tweet was 7/24 with a sinister quote. Do we wait till 7/24? I could get into all the calendars and all that stuff. I've spent way too much time over the years looking at the riddles, and those, I will say, that plays into my thesis. It's more of like icing on the cake for me than, what determines what I actually think about stuff. All right, we'll wear a tinfoil hat for a second for you guys. If you'll go look at BG's post from 2021, the calendar that's 2022 on the wall, where he's looking at Brad Garlinghouse in the rocket, and T. Corona Borealis is in the window with the moon, and the king's outside, and the bear's in a suit, and he's sitting on the couch with the New Year's bottle popped and grapes on the table. If you can't tell, I've looked at that photo a lot of times. There's a carousel that is on the bottom right of the calendar. Carousel Day equates to the harmonic calendar. And he actually even made a tweet about that. I think it was in 2023 around Carousel Day and John Deaton. Well, actually, it had to have been 2022. It was 2022 because it was before the lawsuit was over. So that calendar is important, the harmonic calendar. If you want to go look at that, give it a Google. You can find a Pinterest board that has the right one on there. has 13 months. You use the lunar date to track the actual date that corresponds on that calendar. But if you look at the 13th month, which, again, a lot of the other stuff out there have said that we moon in 13. Tomorrow will be 7/2, which is the actual day that it will be, but it'll be 6/13. I could continue to go on. There's been a lot of things over the years that have repeated for 7/2. Lots of 2/7s. They use mirrors and stuff. So does that mean tomorrow plays out and things happen? I don't know. Is it that simple? Maybe. David Schwartz had a post on 2/7, not 7/2, but 2/7, that he bumped the switch. And there's been some other ones that showed finish line and other things over the years. So we'll have to see. I'm starting to see cracks in the macro. You have to have real world events that play out. It is not just magically going to happen. There have to be catalysts that are orchestrated on a global scale to get this to happen. And that's not an easy thing to do, but shutting the whole world down during COVID wasn't an easy thing to do either, and that happened. So there was a lady that posted on my post earlier today, and she said, "It's impossible" on my bingo card. And I said, "That's a word that we don't say at my house." The two words we do not say at my house are impossible and can't. Those are bad words at my house. Other words, use sparingly, but those are the only two words that will make me madder than a hornet. So the other thing that tomorrow is, and again, if we'll just keep the tinfoil hat on for a second, it's halfway through the year at noon tomorrow. There have been some other posts over the years that have shown like 50-50. There's 182 and a half days, both sides at like noon tomorrow. So I don't know. No, this is not pre-recorded. I don't know what's going to happen. I believe me, I told you guys on Monday, nobody wants this to happen more than I do. I would argue that few people have probably spent more time researching all of this than I have. I've had thousands of conversations over the past 6 years. It is all I have spent my time looking at and doing, if I had any free time. So obsession would be a light way to describe it. Jeff Dunn, good to see you, sir. He says, "Jake, why do you believe the DTCC going 24/5 did not produce the price catalyst for XRP? You opined would," I like good word, "would need to occur in advance." So we're not trading stocks 24/7, and I also haven't seen that Swift has moved to instant settlement either. They said their go live date was 28th, 29th. DTCC did come out and say that they're going live and it's 24/5 settlement on the back end, but stocks are not trading. Like, they're shut down. Like, if you go to look at the market right now, stocks closed at 4:30. I don't know. I thought that they were going to move to 24/5 trading. Like, that was what they said. So the first place that they're going to be implementing distributed ledger technology is on the back end of the stock market. They have the option already to settle T+0 using a digital asset if there's enough liquidity in it. That was one of the caveats that was given by R3, was we will only use what has enough liquidity and has clarity. So at the time, there's only one thing that had clarity. So I took that to mean that would also have the liquidity in it when they need it. Brooks says, "Legend." Appreciate you, dude. What is Crypto Sensei's beef with you? He consistently uses your pictures to get views and then slams you either directly or indirectly, and purposely posts videos or context to manipulate his point. I don't like it. I've been on his show. I like Crypto Sensei. You know what? I'm just going to air it out. If he wants to come talk to me about it, then he can. He had promoted a project that ended up being a rug pull, and he asked me to come back on his show. And I said, hey, man, I would just like to wait a little bit before I came back on, just because I know you're dealing with a lot of blowback right now. I know that, me coming on your show helps you out. I'm happy to do that. I just would like to wait a little bit to kind of let this blow over. He did not respond very well to that. And ever since that point, it's been what you just described. So as far as I'm concerned, we're cool. I don't have any beef with him. Happy to even come back on his show at this point. Like I said before, everything's kind of blown over at this point. I think he's intelligent. He presents well. He has good data. Some people, and look, there's been things in my past where people were like, hey man, not right now. You guys know about that stuff, right? I was like, okay, cool. I get that. But when I tried to do that with him, he did not respond well to that. And then this all started. So I don't know. I like I said, I'll air it out here. He's aware of that. If he wants to have me back on, if we want to work it out, he's got my cell phone, give me a call. Crypto Sensei, happy to talk to you and kind of squash it and move on. Rick Johnson, he says, Confucius say, please respect the Bank of Japan board of directors. Flybys. Once they were young, brave samurais, but now indecisive old men. I'm not going to read that part. Hurrying up, old warriors. Time to fill and make some changes. Where do I? Gotta be careful with where I take this. Things are playing out exactly as they should be. And there are powers that are not visible to the public that direct a lot of things over there. Here too. And everything's right on time. I'm highly certain of that. Robert, Mr. Owens, he says XRP and Ripple and Uphold are connected to Cross River Bank and to each other. X Money is also connected to Cross River Bank. Is XRP connected to X Money? If yes, to what extent? I've mentioned this before, but I will say it again. We've shared this in the mastermind a bunch of times. I don't know if I've ever shared it publicly. There's a wonderful lady that I know. She's older, manages some donor advised funds, does well for herself. Knows Elon. Had dinner with him years ago. It's like 2018, 2019. At the time, she was asking him about crypto, and he said to buy Doge and XRP. 2019. Or 2018, one of the two. So she bought a little bit. It went up. She sold it. Hasn't hung on to it. But all that to say, I mean, Elon started X.com more than 20 years ago. Like, he's realizing his full vision for what he's been working on. And I think maybe even his life's work that ends up leading to a completely different type of civilization than we currently have today. Charles Hoskinson did a really good breakdown of this. He talked about all of Elon's different companies and how it's an amalgamation of technologies that lead to the ability to colonize Mars and collect all the data. I don't think that Hoskinson talked about the data part of it, but that is definitely one of the objectives here, to catalog every piece of data across the entire civilization, which also leads to a technocracy, which his grandfather was the advocate for back in the 1930s. People play really long games. People that are extremely successful are thinking in decades and centuries. And you can even, like, I don't know, I've gone back and forth on this a lot of times. Is it the chicken or the egg? If you start thinking in decades or centuries and you plan for those time horizons and you take daily action toward goals that take that long, you tend to become pretty successful. If you consistently focus on day to day, week to week, month to month, and I know that's difficult if you're in survival mode to even have the concept of stepping back and having a longer term vision on things. But I would argue that if you are capable of that, if you can pull yourself up out of the minutia and see the forest through the trees, then you can start to take daily actions and change things on a daily basis to work toward long-term goals that make you much more successful financially and otherwise. And I think Peter Thiel, Elon, Trump, you may not like any of those people, and that's okay. But I would challenge you just to look at what they've been able to accomplish. And I think it's pretty undeniable the levels of success that they've had by applying these frameworks. And you might think that what they've used that for is malicious or ill-intended. Might be. But through the same point, you could apply the same principles for whatever objectives you want on the other side of life, because it takes a long time. People tend to underestimate what can be accomplished in a decade and significantly overestimate what can be accomplished in a year. With AI, you get a lot done much, much faster. But yeah, anyway, that's a long-tailed way to say, yes, I do think that XRP is significantly more involved with Cross River Bank and X Money than most people understand. 17 or 0, Artemis, they say, wanted to say hi, legend. Hi to the awesome Tile. Thank you. Hi to you. Hope you and your family are doing well. Hope you have a blessed 4th and a safe one. KT baby, there she is. She says, Jake, how dare you call me Rick Johnson? What do you think about other countries now having their own Clarity Acts in effect and Trump wanting us to lead in crypto? I think that the US still sets precedent and the BIS sets precedent. And whatever we choose, the world will follow. If you want to go on to the riddle stuff again real quick, there was another account that's Tony Valentino over there on Twitter. And when the tide started to turn and other people started to say the Clarity Act was less likely to pass, he was one of the first people that came out and said, wouldn't it be wild if the Clarity Act doesn't pass and Trump designates XRP as the primary network for its use in the US? Might be a there. We'll just have to see how it plays out. PRX carry trade. Ooh, like it. They say, I don't need a roof anytime soon. Like David Schwartz, 23-year-old trade job. Dude, crushing it if you got a trade job at 23. Wait until I can retire my future grandchildren with certain digital assets. Self-improvement is the goal this year. Thanks, man. Oh, dude, you are crushing it for 23 years old. Kudos to you. I think that you are going to be exceptionally successful in your life. If you're already in trade work, stacking cash, buying crypto, and doing self-improvement, like I wish that I was doing that at 23. XRP Eco says, Jakey baby, what's going on? What's your honest opinion on the XCN or Oxy Onyx Coin. Thanks for the expertise. Could it be JP Morgan's token? Possibly. I cannot find anything definitive online. So for me, maybe I'm the other way around on this one. I want some proof before I'm willing to buy it. It's done exceptionally well for people. I can tell you that. There's been some significant price appreciation on that for those that got in early. Is it eventually a rug pull? Is it really the real thing? Would JP Morgan launch a public token? I don't know. It's not something that I will currently allocate to. That one's going to be like Apple for Warren Buffett for me. Like once it's like, yeah, that is actually what they're going to use, I'd make an allocation. Until then, and that's also predicated on the fact that I'm in wealth preservation mode instead of wealth creation mode, right? Two very different skill sets, two very different operating systems. But to diversify a portfolio with leverage against XRP, I think that could absolutely be a great option if it is what people think it is. Crypto Topaz. Sorry, it's late for me. He says, thoughts from you. I bought my house back in 2017, appreciated double, sold it last month, and renting now. I'm using the gains to kill my debt off and dollar cost average into XRP. What was this a decent move in your opinion? I don't know what your debt was. I think it's a great move on the house. And if you are using that liquidity event to invest in other assets and like not have dead capital that's not working for you, yeah, I think that you're doing a great job. If you're paying down debts that are above 9-10%, you're effectively making 9 or 10% on that money, right? Because you're not going to have to pay that in the future and you're paying it off early. I think that's a good use of that money. If you're paying off debt that's higher than that, if it's less than that, maybe potentially servicing it would be a better option. If you wouldn't like it as a return on your money, probably not good to pay the debt off with that money. You could probably put it in the market or do something with it to generate a higher return. Like I've said before, though, peace of mind and quality of life are a big piece of why people pay down debt. I think I'm like right on the cusp of, there are a lot of people my age that do not want to be in debt because their parents told them debt is bad. I think that is a lie that's been told to people. I think debt is not bad. I think it is a tool. Just like a gun, it can be good and bad. Just like fire, it can be good and bad. So you want to use it responsibly. You need to have respect for debt, not take on too much leverage, understand what you're doing, be trained to use it correctly. All of those things are important. But yeah, if you're paying off, higher cost debt and the rest of it's being averaged into XRP, I think you're smarter than most people. Most people think their home is an asset. Your home holds value. Okay, so similar to gold, similar to the S&P 500. And obviously there's market fluctuations where there's a, euphoria and an emotional response where things trade at a higher value than they actually are worth. And there's also times where there's an emotional response where there's lulls in the market and things trade at a lower value than they're actually worth. But if you look at the mean over the long term, it pretty much just keeps up with inflation. So yeah, I think you're doing great. And I appreciate you asking my opinion. Like I've said earlier, this is not financial advice. You should not be advised by me. You should go talk with your CPA and your, financial advisor before making any financial decisions. Heath says, hey, Jake, is any BIS announcements about XRP Tier 1? I haven't seen it, dude. They said that they were going to make announcements here in Q2. Well, we're already a day into Q3. like I said on the live Monday night, I don't control Swift. I don't control the BIS. I don't control the DTCC. I don't have purview over any of them. I wouldn't think that they would let those things linger too far into Q3 here without coming out and making amends and doing what they said they were going to do. So, like I mentioned earlier, things got to move tomorrow if anything's going to happen by the 4th. Moran 801, they say, legend, how are you? I bought the LLC back in December, never filled it out, the intake form, because work got insanely busy. I forgot. Now that Laughlin is no longer an LLC partner and we never started the LLC papers, how do I start it and not do, how do I start it if due to change to DAG? If you're logged in our system that you made the purchase, then we'll just fulfill it for you, my man. Not a big deal. Just reach out to our team. If the LLC was filed, we'll be able to find it. We can get you the documentation. We can get you up in the new system and get you going. No big deal. I would just reach out to our team. Make sure that you use the email address that you used to make the purchase, and they should be able to fulfill for you and honor that our commitment that we have for the original purchase. So, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being wanting to work with us, and hopefully at the end of the year it was really profitable for you. We already did this one. Always kicks me down in the chat a little bit. We're gonna go all the way back up. Try to grab the rest of these super chats. As I've said before, I'm sure that I will miss a super chat. I went all the way to the bottom. I'm working my way back up at this point. So if you're posting super chats right now, I am not going to read them. Would highly encourage you to email it over if you do decide to make a super chat tonight to info@digitalfamilyoffice.io. They'll get that to my wife. I will read them on the Monday Night Live next week. And hopefully we're celebrating at least the 4th next week. AS, oh, we got, maybe it's Australian dollar. Gavin, is this Gavin? Dude, he says, long-time listener, first-time caller, huge fan. You are 100% sure that the reverse carry trade will happen. Do you have a point where you think you may be wrong? If not by Christmas 2026, could you have it all wrong? I don't, how do I say this without sounding egotistical or, I don't want to be pompous or egotistical. I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong. I try not to have an ego about stuff. I think everybody has an ego. I try to keep mine in check. If at any point I feel like it's no longer viable for it to actually take place, I will happily admit that I was wrong and it's going to be something else that causes price appreciation. We're not at that point yet. We're literally on the precipice of this finally playing out after more than 2 years of talking about it, which I could also see why people like, this is dragging on a lot longer than you thought it would. For me too. Believe me. I feel like Michael Burry at this point, a broken record saying that this is going to happen and nobody believes me or they question it. And then eventually it will it'll be so fast that you'd make your head spin. But anyway, I don't really entertain the idea yet because there are so many confluences that point to it is going to happen. But if at some point it doesn't look, I no longer think that it is a likely outcome, I will come on here and I will say I was wrong. I will admit when I'm at fault on stuff. And sometimes I do that to my own detriment. So that's where it's at. Let's see here. I jokingly told my brother I sold all my XRP today. He freaked out and almost sold everything. Please tell him his paper hand. He's a paper-handed punk. You're a paper-handed punk. He's not alone. There are a lot of people that have taken other people at their word because they view them as credible, or they know that they understand more than they do, and probably make a larger allocation than they should for not understanding what they're actually investing in. I would encourage anybody that follows this channel to not do that. Do not just listen to me and dive in both feet on this thing because I said it's going to $1,000 or you think that's what I said. Do your own research, listen to a bunch of other people, understand what these networks are and what these assets do. And if you feel compelled at that point, based on the thesis that you've created after doing the research, that it will do well, you can make a suitable allocation for you. And then that way you're not going to get paper hands when your buddy that told you about it pulls a joke on you and says he sold his. Unfortunately, that is how the majority of people make investments. We're not quite as bad as horses. We're not herd animals. But a lot of monkey see, monkey do happens. And I think that's just a primal instinct. Like I've said before, if somebody yells fire in a theater and starts running toward the door, you don't really look for the fire. You just start following, right? So if something big, somebody else says that that's going to happen, and it seems too good to be true, you should definitely check it and probably not believe it most of the time. There's maybe a 0.01% chance when it's actually legitimate. I think this is one of those. But all that to say, you should look around the theater before just running for the door, and make sure that it is what the other person says it is. We did that one. XRP Maxi, hey dude, good to see you. He said, I posted today on X that you were trending in Australia. Might be a Jake Claver Aussie tour on the cards. Stay well, excited for price appreciation. Thank you, man. Blessings to you and your family. I don't know if you're down under or not. It says that you have Aussie dollars, so I'm assuming you are. Sydney is on the bucket list. I would love to snorkel the Great Barrier Reef. I want to go to the Golden Coast. It's a long plane ride, like a long plane ride from Texas. But I think it would be well worth it. And also, we have some friends there now that have moved there from New York. I won't say Ryan's last name, but shout out to Ryan. He knows who he is. Long-time OG from the mastermind. And anyway, I definitely would like to go there and see the Opera House and all that Australia has to offer. Definitely don't want to see the giant spiders. I don't think I'm going to fight a kangaroo or, do the escapades of Crocodile Dundee while I'm there, or Steve Irwin. But there's a lot of things there I would like to see, and it is on the bucket list. So maybe we'll have to make a tour. I think that if I'm going to go, I'm definitely going to spend at least a couple weeks there, because I've flown to Dubai, which is 14 or 16 hours, depending on if you count the stop in Doha. And to turn around and come back 2 or 3 days later and have on that flight again, like next time I travel that far internationally, I am there for at least a little bit. Be Thou AI says, does XLM getting the DTCC partnership and also being associated with Open USD change your price thoughts over time? Seems like second to XRP. I'll give you one better. I don't think that XLM will be the number 2 token. I think HBAR is probably the number 2 token. I think XLM falls somewhere between 3 and 5 over the long term. So no, my price predictions have not changed in any capacity. I think there may even be close to some type of gold to silver ratio for XRP and XLM. I don't know if it's going to be 40 to 1. Maybe it's more of a biblical, ratio of like a 14 to 1. So 14 XLM would be 1 XRP type thing. So that means if XRP is $2,000, or we'll make it easy, $1,400, XLM would be $100 type thing. That's how I see it playing out. I would love to be wrong. I would love people to make way more money. I would love for it to be the number 2 and be able to, come on here and say I was wrong. I don't think I'm going to be on that one. David Ripple, butchered that. I'm sorry, man. He says, how am I taxed in the US if I bring my XRP in cash to the United States from Canada and try to put it into a trust? As long as you live in Canada, you are taxed as a Canadian. There is a double tax treaty. The taxes in Canada are more expensive than they are here in the US. So you will be taxed at the Canadian amount. Now, if you were to move here and become a US citizen, or at least get your visa and work here, you wouldn't have to pay tax in Canada unless you spent a certain number of days, going back home. So again, like I stated earlier here, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand. I don't have a whole lot of good news for you. Unfortunately, your governments want your money and they need it to be able to fund their somewhat socialistic stuff. Now, the technocracy may change all of that. And they also may make this a global deal where there's no tax implications because it's used for transfers. There's a lot of unknowns here. Okay. I'm hopeful for all of those, by the way. I think that they're probably likely outcomes. But we have to live in the paradigm that we currently exist in and, try to prepare and be flexible enough for a future that changes from the current situation. So, yeah, you're still going to get taxed if you live there in Canada. XRP Cars says, Jake, I got an answer back about my question from Monday about the LLC and wasn't sure if your team forwarded it to you or not. Thanks for the help again. I will give it a look here. I don't see all my emails. My assistant does a good job of answering the majority of what reaches my inbox. See if I got anything from Morgan today. Don't see anything. I'm assuming you're talking about the multi-member LLC, and Mike should have gotten with you on that in order to get that situated for you. And if he didn't, or if it's something else, reach out to Mike, and he would be happy to help you. Mr. Juarez says, hypothetical 27-year-old, only child, parents in 60s, combined 50 to 60,000 XRP, 75-25. He holds majority, bot held separately. How would you structure this to be held at DWP? Depends on what state they're in. So you didn't give me that information. They're in a qualified joint venture state. They could do a partnership and be able to contribute that XRP. Even if it's held separately, if they file jointly on their taxes, and then most states you have community property, you could just move it into one wallet, set up a single member LLC, and then add the other spouse on there as the manager. That would be a really easy way to do it. If they wanted to hold their respective ownerships in there for whatever reason, I don't know what benefit that would provide that would be better than the solution I just proposed. But if they did, and they're in a qualified joint venture state, then they can contribute the assets independent of one another, and then hold that much equity in it apiece. The operating agreement becomes much more complex, like I explained on Monday, when you do a multi-member LLC and a partnership. At least if it's in a QJV state, there's 15 of them. You're not going to have the tax implications that you would in a traditional partnership. But again, most states are community property states. If they're in like Louisiana or some other states, then there's a little less of that. Each state has its own kind of statute around community property. You didn't say if they were married or not. I'm assuming they are, because they're in their 60s and you're 27. And, well, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe that's why you're asking me this question, because they are separated or divorced and they both hold some XRP independent of one another. If the second is the case, they probably would want to set up separate LLCs, and then post price appreciation. We would absolutely love to work with your whole family. All right. John, my man, he says, Jake Lees. And the tea lady, not financial advice, 11,000 in a 401k. How do I roll it into XRP? I appreciate all the hard work and long hours. Thank you, my friend. God continues to bless you and the family. Thanks to all the mods. Appreciate you being the mastermind, man. And good question. So you have to have a qualifying event in order to be able to roll over a 401k. Most of the time that means you leave your employer that you had that 401k with, and at that point you'd be able to roll it to a self-directed 401k or a self-directed IRA. And that is the point at which you would then be able to move it to an IRA type product where you could hold crypto and work with digital wealth partners, or you could go to iTrust or some of the other good companies out there and work with them as well. For the amount that you mentioned, I would probably recommend iTrust. They do a good job for those that might hold less assets in that type of vehicle. I'm not an affiliate. I just, I ran into their COO the other day when we were coming back from Consensus. I'd love to work with them in some capacity, just like the Crypto Sensei deal. Like, I'm cool to work with everybody. I want everybody to win. Other people don't like me for some reason. I don't know if it's, I don't know. But anyway, that would be my recommendation. Probably go to iTrust, get it set up over there. Unless you have XRP outside of your 401k that you're going to be buying. And if you got at least 50,000, then we would love to work with you. We could do both. You could have 50,000 XRP held in like 4 different ways. So if you could have a personal account, you could have an LLC, you could have a trust, and you could have an IRA or multiple IRAs that added up to 50,000, and you'd be able to work with DAG Wealth. So go check it out. Right now it's still digitalwealthpartners.net, but if you have at least 50,000 XRP, you want institutional custody at Anchorage, you want an advisor, you want a holistic approach to your portfolio, they do a fantastic job over there. And all you got to do is go fill out the contact us form at digitalwealthpartners.net. GDT, they say, every time you say ball drop, Rector gets jealous. I'm going to stay away from that one. It made me smile, though. Rodeo, they say, hi, Jake. Wanted to ask you, do you find it interesting that you can be a Porsche and Ferrari, that you can buy a Porsche and Ferrari with XRP? I guess luxury brands are going to take crypto but they sell it immediately. It's not like they're holding it. It's just another marketing deal for them. I don't think it has anything to do with what they think is going to be adopted or where the market's going or any of that. I think that they just had somebody that came to Porsche or Ferrari and they said, hey, I got a bunch of XRP. I don't want to have to sell it and deal with the taxes and the fees and then give it to you guys. Would you just take it directly so that I only have to pay tax on it and I don't have to pay the extra 2% or 20 basis points or whatever it is to exchange it for dollars? And they were like, sounds good. We'll figure it out. And then they, came out with a marketing program around it to make it sound, awesome for people that own XRP, that you can buy that. I mean, I've talked to all these retailers. They don't hold crypto. They're scared of it. They accept it and they immediately sell it into dollars before the tax basis changes, and they owe additional capital gains on it. Kingdom Connected, he says, is the ball they're going to drop the same ball from New Year's with 589 lights? Wink, wink. Tinfoil hat, unite. It is, in fact, the same ball drop that they did on New Year's. All right, I'm gonna grab a couple more here before we wrap it up tonight. We got Dung on Dojo. Says back and forth between XLM and H bar. Why H bar number 2? Less supply. Let me verify that real quick. I might be wrong in that. H bar supply. Yeah, so there's both of them have total of 50 billion. So actually, currently in circulation, there's 43.47 billion H bar. I think XLM has all 50 billion in circulation. Nope, they have 33.98 billion in circulation. So both of them still have some escrow to put onto the market to help incentivize build out of the network and scaling of things. I think so. If you look at who's on Hedera's council, they have Google, Dell, IBM, tons of others. They have 39 seats on their council. Those companies aren't going to be on just anybody's council. Okay. The other thing is it's Hashgraph. Hashgraph is more secure than blockchain for certain types of information. And for like HIPAA compliance, I think that there's just a larger total addressable market cap that HBAR will encompass. It will also transmit stable coins, which is what XLM's primary use case is. But I think it may have a larger distribution versus, just merchant services and peer-to-peer payments, because I think that the majority of dApps or decentralized applications are going to be built on top of HBAR in the future. And again, pointing back to those that are on their council, Google being one of them, if a Google adopts your blockchain as their core infrastructure, and how many people have a Google wallet? How many people have an Apple wallet? Right? So you can imagine the distribution and the scale that those type of companies have. And if HBAR is their choice for that distribution and settlement and data security, and like the other thing is the tokenization of data and also analyzing certain types of data and allowing that to give data value. Like there's all these intangible things out there in the world that I think will end up being tokenized, and there will be quantified, and there'll also be relative value given to them that can then be exchanged. And if you were the network that aggregated the majority of the data, and there was some way to quantitatively denote value or determine value of that data and then exchange it, that creates a completely new economy that doesn't even exist right now. So it's hard. Like you could look at total addressable market for what exists today, and then you also have to be thinking about total addressable market for things that don't even exist yet. I've mentioned this before. People are like, well, XRP can't get to $1 million. And I'm like, all right, well, what if the GDP goes 100x from here? Because now we have economies on the moon and on Mars and a bunch of metaverses, and all of those have stock markets, and all of those have AI agents and robots and humans that all provide value in those ecosystems. Does your math break? Or are you just using the paradigm that exists today in order to be able to make that determination? So I think that there will be more things created on HBAR, and it will have a deeper integration with a higher total addressable market across multiple economies in the future versus XLM, and that's why I place it at number 2 versus Hyperledger. Sorry, I know that was very long-winded, but hopefully that gave you a holistic explanation as to why I came to that determination. Reed, thank you for the super chat, my man. I don't see a question here, but I do appreciate the super chat. Young Slime, he says, would it make sense for me to swap my XLM, HBAR, XTC into XRP since the Clarity Act isn't going to pass? Those will probably stay low, right? So I have time later to accumulate. Young Slime, I can't tell you what to do, but that's my plan. That is why I am positioned where I'm at. I have owned all those other ones in the past. I haven't bought any of them in the past 3 years. I've been solely consolidated to XRP because what you just stated there is my belief. Again, I'm not trying to impart that on you. You should go do your own research, listen to many other people. Diversification is a hedge against ignorance. If you are not 1,000% sure that XRP is the thing, and that your thesis is that it will do better than those, and you can quantify and determine why that is, you probably are better off staying diversified. If you can do all of those things and you basically have assurances that XRP will outperform those and you could buy back into those later, that makes a lot of sense. But again, you should not take my word for it. You should do your own research. And maybe, like I said, I got 2% that the Clarity Act does pass here before summer recess in August. There's still a small chance in my mind, if the perfect scenario plays out and Congress is backed against a wall and so is Trump, and they got to do it. So you're saying there's a chance. I'm saying there's a chance. It's a really small one. Holistic Doc, I like the name. They say, what do you think about the shutdown of CERN? I think people make a big deal out of it and it gets headlines, and there's probably more to it. I'm probably ignorant, and it probably coincides with historical things, and like it's a wormhole and it allows us to jump timelines and all these other things. Maybe. It's not something I spend my time on. So unfortunately, I can't give you like a well thought out thesis around if it matters or not. But I do appreciate the super chat and the question. Freed Yas says, if XRP does surpass all-time highs, such as $10 or higher, it's likely to drop back down to $1. Is it likely to drop back down to $1? Depends on, I will say it depends on if Tether has imploded before it moves or after it moves. If Tether has pooped the bed before XRP moves, then probably not. If we have another liquidity crisis in crypto beyond XRP's subtle price appreciation to $10, there's a small probability it would pull back down substantially during a Tether crash. Shane Mario Show says, SF arm wrestling legend. App Carbon One, Anchorage, God bless you and the tea lady and your kiddo. What is most exciting to you leading us to price appreciation and the app's growth? I wish I could show you the app. I am like so jazzed up about the app at this point. It is, I have built everything that I could have ever wanted to be able to manage my entire financial life built into one unified application. So like all of my entities are in there, all of my insurance policies, all of my LLCs, all of my trusts. I have my full wealth management and all my investments. I've got a full command center and an AI that gives me a report every single day of like what's going on and what I need, what needs my attention, and like all this stuff. It's going to be a while before we are able to roll any of this out to our client base, which we're a larger organization now. We really do want to be institutional, right? Like that's the goal. DAG wants to be the go-to institution for those with digital assets and that need any of these services, whether it's wealth management, tax advice, estate planning, bill pay, private client services, concierge, private security, coordinating your family office and meetings. And we're on the cutting edge of utilizing the most progressive tech that I've ever seen as far as AI goes, and implementing all of that so that you do have a human component, you have a human advisor, but you are able to leverage all the benefits that come with, AI and how it can serve you. So that's what I'm excited about. Price appreciation is a foregone conclusion for me. And so I tell my team all the time, like I live 5 years from now, which is it's a weird, like I see where the world's headed. I see what's going to happen and how we can be positioned to make sure that people have the resources and tools they're going to need when all this takes place. So anyway, that's what I'm jazzed up about. And don't go telling my team, don't be calling in asking for all the stuff I just mentioned. It doesn't exist. Don't even tell them I told you any of that. I'm going to get in trouble. Okay. So just anything I just said, just forget it. Just know that it's coming and that the app that we currently have is going to evolve into that. Okay. Sir, B3K says, how often do you have conversations with the powers that be that reassure you that everything is still on track to play out like you've said, meaning your domino theory and price appreciation? Powers that be. I said this on Twitter earlier today. My thesis has come from an amalgamation of conversations across a variety of different people that had NDAs or certain expertise that did not share certain specifics with me. Just denoting that. I try to be very tactical in my conversations with people that may have information that I would like to know. And I don't ask directly for that information. I never do. Sometimes I will just say something as matter of fact in the conversation and look for their visceral response. Sometimes I will ask leading questions to get them excited about whatever it is. And then sometimes I don't want to say more than they should, but will describe things in a way that allows me to infer other things. And this sounds like I'm manipulating people now that I'm listening to myself talk about it. I don't view it that way. Like I genuinely am curious. I want to have the conversation, but I also don't want to be disrespectful and come at them with something that they shouldn't release, or put them in a position where they feel awkward and they're like, I don't want to talk to this guy anymore. So there's never been there's only ever been two people that have directly told me that, like, yeah, that's what's going to play out. Credible sources on those. But the rest of it, putting it together, and the iterations that have happened on it have been from one-off conversations about different things with different people in different jurisdictions or domestically, or people in Congress or people on certain boards, or just, like I said, I've been very blessed in my life to go to a bunch of places and meet a bunch of cool people. Oftentimes it's a small world. They know other people that and you get into conversation, and they'll say, hey, talk about this person. Oh, I talked to them last week and they said this, this, and this. Things like that. So kind of circling back to the question here. How often do I talk to the powers that be? Biannually, quarterly, probably. Yeah, that would be, yeah, that's probably fair. We already did this one. I think I actually got to all but a couple of these super chats. I'm gonna check something real quick and make sure that I didn't get pinged by my good buddy Mike. There he is. Nope. Okay. All right. We'll grab a couple more and then we will wrap it tonight. Lord Bergkamp says, what do you think of crypto projects like Canton? I think that they will be used in some capacity to tokenize exchanges. Things that are governance tokens, I don't think are going to have the same price appreciation that a lot of people are hoping for. Things that are not transferring value in an ecosystem, but are used to pay fees to participate in that ecosystem, I don't think are going to have the same price appreciation people are hoping for. Tokens that are going to be used to transfer value and facilitate transfer of data or other things inside ecosystems that have a significant amount of demand in order to be able to accomplish their objectives, those are the tokens that I think will see the highest liquidity involvement or requirements. So all that said, I think Canton falls on the first part of what I was talking about. I don't think it is a lot of what people have cracked it up to be. Marty says, Jake, the Arbinger, I'm so lucky to have found you. Thank you for the super chat, the 558.90, 589. Very cool. And I did the other one here. So I think we're good on those. Goopa Supreme says, why do we need Clarity Act so bad if we have it? Why is it the limit? It's not. I just explained a lot of that earlier if you want to listen back to it later. He also asked, been working construction 60 hours a week and building my stack. How soon do you think till I don't have to work for someone else and build my own business of XRP rather work for myself? You can work for yourself now, my man. At any point, you can literally decide to just start working for yourself. You can just do things. You don't need XRP to pan out. If you work in construction, I'll give you an example. My buddy Stan. Shout out to Stan if he ever watches this. I don't know if he does or not. He runs a masonry company here in Dallas. Does very well. He worked for another gentleman for a long time. Bids, quotes, did the sales, ran the website, all this stuff. The other guy treated him like crap, didn't pay him anything, and he finally just stepped away and was like, screw it, I'm going to do this myself. And he has dwarfed that guy in the 4 years that he's been around because he was the brains of that business. He went and found crews. He goes out and he went out and bid the projects. He created the SEO on the website in order for people to be able to search it and drive search engine optimization. And so when people Google, Masonry Dallas, he's the first one that comes up, or he's in the top 2 results. People click on his website. He's a veteran. People like that about him. He presents well, shows up to the job site, shows up on time. If you're in construction in any capacity and you just show up, you don't even have to show up on time, just show up to actually do a quote, you will run circles around. I don't know how many times I have called trade workers in different trades and they just don't show up when they're supposed to come and do whatever they're supposed to do. And whoever shows up and gives me a quote is who I go with, because I'm so tired of having to call around and work through it. So if you're in construction and you're a hard worker, which is what it sounds like you are, a lot of people feel like, well, I have to have this to happen before I do this. And I will say it will suck for like 6 months to a year. Starting your, and even after post XRP price appreciation, your business will suck for the first 6 to 12 months. And then you'll get some traction and you'll get some customers and things will start to roll and things will pick up and you'll gain some momentum. And then, you know, before you know it, you're rocking and rolling and you figured a bunch of things out because you had to. If you start now and start to figure out a bunch of things because you have to, you're going to be, but again, like you said, cost to benefit. Do I keep working here and stacking XRP because I know I can make that money here? Or do I give up the short term and start working for myself and hope that things don't pan out for another 12 months? I can't tell you what to do. I'm just here to tell you, like, and everybody else watching, you can do stuff. You can make decisions. They are scary. You will be afraid if you're taking a big leap on something. But if it's a two-way door, I'll say this too, and I told my team this earlier today. This is a Jeff Bezos thing. He looks at things as one-way doors and two-way doors. So decisions that you could go back on or change course if you made the wrong choice, it's a two-way door. And go through, try it out. Didn't like that, go back. Don't leave your job on bad terms. If you go start the other thing, as long as it's not like a direct competitor and they're not mad at you, they'll probably hire you back, especially if you're a good hard worker. So I know it hurts, you know, there's some pride and ego to like swallow if you're going to go back with your tail between your legs and ask for your job back. But sometimes you make more money after you do that because they realized how good you were and they were like, crap, we should have paid that guy more. We need him back. That's happened to me before too. So, and then the other ones are one-way decisions. Like you make this decision, you can't go back. Those are one-way doors, and those do require a little bit more forethought before, you know, taking the leap. But leaving your job most of the time, it's a two-way door. It's hard to find good people, and if you are good and do a good job, they most of the time we're glad to have you back, especially if you give them a 2 weeks notice. We already did that one. I think I got through pretty much everything. My TikTok's already dead over here. It's just Facebook, X, and YouTube that we're currently still on. We mentioned the mastermind a bunch of times tonight, so if you guys want to go check that out, updating the website soon on that side too. Can't tell you when. I won't tell you all the cool bells and whistles and stuff that's going to be a part of that either. But we're me and Max Avery are cranking through some stuff with the AI, mostly Max, and he's helping me do it. He is the secret sauce. I don't ever give Max a shout out on here, but I will tonight. If it weren't for Max Avery, none of this at DAG or the mastermind or any of that stuff happens. We met in 2023, and that was really the catalyst for everything that's transpired over the past 3 years. So shout out to Max Avery. He's the man behind a lot of the stuff that happens, social media, marketing, all the stuff. Just want to thank him publicly because none of this is possible without him. So thank you, Max. But on that note, if you want to go check out the mastermind, Max and I are in there. We're on the town hall every Saturday. He gets up there every once in a while during the week. But we literally have stuff every single day of the week at this point for all the members, depending on what tier you're in. They're in the mastermind. So go check it out. And again, like I said, $5,000 value there in Carbon One if you just want to join for $2 and use the code Beyond Broke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, and get the second brain project that Max just put there in the chat for people. Like crazy value on that deal. Go check it out, use it. I think that you guys are going to love it. So that's in Carbon One or higher. And then obviously social, you can join that too. Also $2, it's $25 a month there. We got another event coming up in Athleta. Athleta. Jeez, it's a token. Atlanta, Georgia. Going to be in July. here, not in the too distant future. We try to do more in real life events than any other community out there in crypto, except for maybe Crypto Mondays. On the other side of things, if you do need the LLC or a trust or any of that, I would just go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. And then on the wealth management, if you need, institutional custody, advisory, financial planning, all that fun stuff, go check it out over there at Digital Wealth Partners. I wish you guys a wonderful, wonderful 4th. I think this one's going to be exceptionally special. And I will see you guys Monday next week to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. Hope you guys have a wonderful night, wonderful week. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.